Have you ever wondered how researchers choose their samples for studies? Well, they use different methods, one of which is called non-probability sampling. This intriguing method of sampling is often used in research to select participants from a larger population. However, unlike other methods, it doesn't provide every individual in that population an equal opportunity to be chosen. It's like picking names out of a hat, but not every name is in there. This approach is typically used when getting a complete list of the population is challenging, or when certain segments of the population are more accessible or convenient for sampling. It's a bit like fishing in a vast ocean. You cast your net where you think you'll catch the most fish. Now that you have a basic understanding of what non-probability sampling is, let's dive into the different types of non-probability sampling methods used by researchers. First, we have convenience sampling. Now imagine you're a researcher who needs to gather data quickly. You turn to the people who are readily available or easy to reach. This is essentially what convenience sampling is. It's a non-probability sampling method where participants are chosen based on their accessibility or proximity to the researcher. It's like picking apples from the lowest branches of the tree because they're within your reach. But just as the low-hanging apples might not represent all the apples on the tree, participants selected through convenience sampling may not represent the entire population. This method can lead to biased samples. For instance, if you're researching student studying habits and you only survey students in your local library, your findings might be skewed towards those who prefer library study. So, while convenience sampling can be a quick and easy way to gather data, it's crucial to remember. While convenient, this method might not give us a representative picture of the whole population. And there are more types of non-probability sampling to explore. Let's start with judgmental or purposive sampling. In this method, researchers cherry-pick participants based on their judgment or specific criteria relevant to the research objectives. For instance, if a study is focused on the effects of a new fitness program, the researcher might purposely select fitness enthusiasts as participants. However, this method is subjective and relies heavily on the researcher's knowledge and expertise. Therefore, there's a potential for bias as the sample may not reflect the broader population. Next, we have snowball sampling, also known as chain referral sampling. This method involves initially selecting a few participants who then refer other potential participants. It's like building a snowball, starting small and growing larger as more referrals are added. This method is often used when the population of interest is hard to reach or identify, such as marginalized or stigmatized groups. Quota sampling is another method where researchers divide the population into subgroups based on certain characteristics like age, gender, occupation, and then select participants from each subgroup until the predetermined quota for each category is filled. This method ensures representation from various segments of the population but does not guarantee randomness. Hence, it might lead to over- or underrepresentation of certain groups. Volunteer sampling is where participants self-select into the study by volunteering to participate. This method is commonly used in studies where individuals with a particular interest or experience are sought. However, since volunteers may differ systematically from non-volunteers, this could lead to biased samples. Lastly, we have consecutive sampling. Here, participants are selected based on their availability during a specific time frame or period. This method is often used in longitudinal studies or in settings where access to participants is limited. However, this method might overlook those who are not available during the selected time frame. Each of these methods has its benefits and drawbacks, depending on the research goals and the population of interest. So how do these methods compare and when might we use them? Well, let's dive in. Non-probability sampling methods, including convenience, judgmental, snowball, quota, volunteer, and consecutive sampling, each have their strengths and weaknesses. They are all less time-consuming and less expensive than probability sampling methods, as they don't require a complete list of the population, but they also have a higher risk of bias, as not everyone in the population has an equal chance of being selected. Convenience sampling could be your go-to when you need quick, accessible data, but remember, it may not represent your entire population accurately. Judgmental or purposive sampling is great when you have a specific criteria in mind, but it heavily relies on the researcher's expertise and may not be generalizable. Snowball sampling is particularly useful when your target population is hard to reach or identify. However, it could lead to over-representation of certain groups. Quota sampling, on the other hand, ensures representation from various segments of the population, but it lacks randomness, which can introduce bias. Volunteer sampling is excellent for studies seeking individuals with a particular interest or experience, yet it might result in biased samples, as volunteers may differ from non-volunteers. Consecutive sampling is ideal for longitudinal studies or limited access situations, but it might exclude individuals unavailable during the sampling period. So, when might we prefer these non-probability methods? Well, they are particularly useful when it's challenging to get a complete list of the population or when you need to quickly gather data. They are also handy when you are studying a specific subset of the population or when you want to ensure representation from various segments of the population. However, it's crucial to remember that the convenience of non-probability sampling comes with a trade-off. The risk of bias is higher, which can affect the validity of your results. Therefore, these methods should be used wisely with a clear understanding of their limitations. While these methods are quicker and less expensive, they can be more prone to bias, so they must be used wisely. Now, to sum up what we've learned about non-probability sampling methods, we've explored various techniques, each with its unique characteristics and potential biases. We started with convenience sampling, which favors accessibility but may not accurately represent the entire population. Then we delved into judgmental or purposive sampling, a subjective method that relies heavily on the researcher's expertise. We also touched on snowball sampling, a chain referral technique often used for hard-to-reach populations, and quota sampling, which ensures representation from various segments but lacks randomness. We discussed volunteer sampling, a method that attracts participants with particular interests, and consecutive sampling, which operates within a specific time frame. These methods are generally quicker, easier, and less expensive than probability sampling methods. However, they may be more prone to bias and may not provide a complete picture of the population. Researchers must carefully consider these methods' limitations when interpreting their study results. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, the best sampling method depends on your research question and population.